The spotlight burns my face as the first boo echoes through the auditorium, followed by another, then another, until the entire Harmony Heights Academy talent show audience is drowning me in their contempt. Their voices rising like a tsunami of cruelty that crashes over me while I stand frozen on stage, my original composition Dreams Beyond the Stars dying in my throat as my voice cracks on the very note I've practiced 1,000 times in my bedroom mirror, believing foolishly that tonight would be my moment. My chance to prove that Madison Chen isn't just the awkward stepdaughter who tries too hard, but someone with real talent, real dreams, real worth. The sheet music trembles in my hands, and I realize with horror that the notes swimming before my eyes aren't the ones I memorized, aren't the careful arrangement I spent months perfecting, but some twisted version where every chord change leads to disaster, every lyric sounds forced and amateur, and suddenly I'm forgetting words I wrote with my own heart, stumbling over melodies that used to flow like water. While somewhere in the audience, I can see Victoria Chen, my stepsister, covering her mouth in mock concern while her eyes sparkle with satisfaction. And beside her sits my stepmother, Linda Chen, shaking her head with that perfectly practiced expression of disappointed love that she's mastered so well. "Get off the stage!" Someone shouts from the back, and the cruel laughter ripples through the auditorium like poison spreading through veins. And I catch sight of Jason Park, my boyfriend, the Golden Boy quarterback and student body president, who promised he'd be cheering louder than anyone. But now he's slumped in his seat, his face buried in his hands like he can't bear to be associated with this train wreck. With me, with the girl who thought she could reach for something beautiful and instead became the punchline of Harmony Heights Academy's most memorable talent show disaster. My fingers slip on the guitar strings, producing a discordant screech that makes the booing grow louder, more vicious, and I can see phones held high, recording every second of my humiliation for posterity, for TikTok, for the kind of viral fame that destroys rather than builds. And through the blinding stage lights, I spot Marcus Liu in the far corner, my childhood friend and neighbor who tried to warn me, who said something felt wrong about Victoria's sudden enthusiasm for my performance. But I didn't listen because I was so hungry for family support, so desperate to believe that maybe finally they wanted me to succeed. "This is painful to watch," I hear someone whisper loudly enough for the microphone to catch, and the laughter swells again, and I know that tomorrow the hallways will echo with imitations of my cracking voice, my stumbling words, my complete and utter failure to be anything more than the girl who thought she belonged on stage when everyone else could see she was meant to stay in the shadows where stepchildren belong. I drop the guitar with a crash that reverberates through the sound system, the feedback screech somehow more musical than anything I've managed to produce in the last 5 minutes, and I run, pushing past the heavy stage curtains while the audience's cruel amusement follows me like hunting dogs, my tears blurring everything into streaks of color and shame, because this was supposed to be my moment, my chance to prove that I inherited something from my mother, besides her vintage jewelry and faded photographs, something that made me worthy of taking up space in this world. Backstage, the harsh fluorescent lights strip away any remaining illusion of glamour, revealing the shabby reality behind the magic, and I'm gasping for air, my chest tight with humiliation and something deeper, something that feels like the death of every dream I've ever dared to hold, when I hear footsteps approaching and turn to see Jason Park, his face carefully arranged in the expression he uses when he's about to deliver bad news with maximum efficiency and minimum guilt. "Madison," he says, and even my name sounds different in his mouth now, stripped of warmth, professional and distant like he's addressing a stranger. I can't be associated with this kind of embarrassment. You have to understand that my Harvard application depends on maintaining a certain image, and after tonight, he trails off, but the implication hangs between us like a blade, sharp and final. "After tonight, what?" I manage to whisper, though part of me already knows, has maybe always known that Jason Park's affection was conditional, dependent on my ability to reflect well on his carefully curated reputation, his perfectly planned future where everything serves the greater goal of Jason Park's success. "I think we should take a break," he says, and the words hit me like physical blows because even now, even as he's abandoning me in my lowest moment, he can't be honest enough to call it what it is, can't admit that he's dumping me because I failed to be the kind of girlfriend who enhances rather than threatens his standing, the kind who makes him look good instead of making him cringe with secondhand embarrassment. "You mean you're breaking up with me?" I say, and my voice sounds strange, hollow, like it's coming from someone else entirely, someone who's watching this conversation from outside her own body. Don't be dramatic, Madison. And there it is. That tone he uses when he wants to make me feel like my emotions are unreasonable. Like my hurt is an overreaction to his perfectly logical decision making process. We're just incompatible. Tonight proved that, and I think it's better for both of us if we acknowledge that now before things get more complicated. But before I can respond, before I can even process the full weight of his betrayal, I hear voices approaching. Familiar voices that make my blood freeze because I recognize the perfectly modulated tones of my stepsister Victoria and the syrupy sweetness of my stepmother Linda. And they're talking about me, about tonight, about plans I never knew existed. Did you see her face when she realized the sheet music was wrong? Victoria's laughter is bright and cruel, like silver bells announcing an execution. I thought she might actually cry on stage, which would have been even better for the video. The sound system malfunction was perfect timing, Linda responds, her voice warm with maternal pride for her daughter's successful sabotage. Though I still think we should have found a way to make her fall off the stage entirely, really complete the humiliation. Don't worry, Mother, this is just the beginning, Victoria says, and I can hear the smile in her voice, the satisfaction of a plan unfolding exactly as intended. Now that everyone's seen how delusional she is about her talent, it'll be easy to convince Daddy that the music scholarship money should go to someone more realistic, someone who understands their limitations. Your business degree will be so much more practical, Linda agrees. And once Madison accepts that she's not meant for the spotlight, she can focus on supporting the family in more appropriate ways. Maybe secretarial work or something that doesn't require creativity or ambition. Jason shifts uncomfortably beside me, and I realize he's been listening too. That he knows about their scheme, has maybe always known. And his breakup timing isn't coincidental, but coordinated. Part of a larger plan to strip away everything that made me believe I could be more than what they've decided I deserve to be. You knew, I whisper, turning to face him, and his guilty expression confirms everything. You knew they were sabotaging me, and you let it happen. Madison, it's not that simple, he starts, but Victoria's voice cuts through whatever excuse he's preparing. Oh, good, you told her, she says, stepping into view with Linda beside her, both of them glowing with victory. I was worried we'd have to pretend to be surprised by your breakup, but this is so much more efficient. Victoria, what are you talking about? I ask, though the pieces are already falling into place in my mind, creating a picture so ugly I don't want to believe it's real. Sweetie, Linda's voice drips with false sympathy. Jason was never really your boyfriend. He's been dating Victoria for months. We just thought it would be kinder to let you have your little fantasy until after the talent show. Until you could see for yourself that some dreams are meant to stay dreams. The world tilts sideways and I grab the wall for support as everything I thought I knew rearranges itself into a new, horrible configuration where every sweet moment, every kiss, every whispered promise was part of an elaborate performance designed to keep me compliant until they were ready to destroy me completely. Why? The word comes out broken, barely audible, and Victoria's expression softens into something that might be pity if it weren't so thoroughly mixed with contempt. Because you needed to learn your place, she says gently, like she's explaining something obvious to a slow child. Daddy loves you, we all do, but love means helping people understand their limitations. And your limitation is that you're not special, Madison. You're just ordinary. And the sooner you accept that, the happier everyone will be. The next weeks blur together in a haze of social media mockery and academic consequences, with Madison fails trending at our school, with memes spreading through group chats and hallway whispers that follow me like ghosts, while I watch my carefully planned future crumble piece by piece as the Music Scholarship Committee withdraws their offer, citing concerns about my stability and professional readiness after seeing the viral videos of my breakdown, and my teachers, who once encouraged my musical ambitions, now suggest I consider more practical electives, more realistic career paths that don't require the kind of confidence I clearly lack. My father, David Chen, approaches me with the careful gentleness of someone handling something fragile and dangerous, his eyes full of the kind of love that hurts because it's mixed with disappointment. And when Linda and Victoria present their reasonable arguments about redirecting my college fund toward Victoria's more practical business degree, toward her more promising future, He nods, with the weary acceptance of a man who just wants his family to be happy, even if it means sacrificing one daughter's dreams for another's security. Madison, sweetheart, he says, sitting on the edge of my bed while I stare at the ceiling, at the water stain that looks like a butterfly. I know this is hard, but maybe this is an opportunity to explore other interests, other talents that might be more sustainable. You mean more ordinary, I whisper, and he flinches like I've slapped him. I mean more realistic, he corrects, but his voice wavers with doubt. Victoria's business plan is really quite impressive, and the market research she's done suggests that investing in her education would benefit the whole family long term, create opportunities for everyone. But what he doesn't say, what none of them say, is that opportunities for everyone means opportunities for Victoria, for Linda, for the family members who understand how to play the game, how to smile and manipulate and take what they want while making it seem like generosity, like love, like the natural order of things where some people are meant to shine and others are meant to dim their light so the chosen ones can sparkle brighter. The final blow comes 3 months later when I discover that my mother's vintage piano, the Steinway Baby Grand that she left specifically to me in her will, the instrument where I learned to find melodies in my grief and compose songs from my loneliness, has been sold to fund Victoria's new BMW, a graduation present that Linda insisted was necessary for making the right impression in college, for networking with the kind of people who could advance Victoria's career. And when I confront my father about this theft of my inheritance, he explains with heartbreaking sincerity that the piano was just sitting there gathering dust, that Victoria needs transportation more than I need sentimental objects, that sometimes love means making sacrifices for the greater good of the family. But it was mine, I whisper, and he nods sadly, like he's mourning my inability to understand adult complexities, to see beyond my selfish attachment to material things that don't serve any practical purpose in the grand scheme of our blended family's success. It was your mother's, he corrects gently, and she would have wanted it to help her stepdaughter succeed, to bring the family together rather than create divisions based on the past. By senior year, I've become a ghost in my own life, drifting through classes and hallways while anxiety eats away at my ability to sleep, to eat, to function like a normal person, and my grades slip from honor roll to barely passing as depression settles over me like a heavy blanket that I can't shake off, no matter how hard I try to remember who I used to be before they systematically dismantled my sense of self, my belief in my own worth, my hope that tomorrow might be different from today. The guidance counselor suggests community college, technical school, anything that doesn't require the kind of academic performance or personal statement that might remind admissions committees of my spectacular public failure. And I nod along with her practical advice while inside, I'm screaming that this isn't who I was supposed to be, that there's been some cosmic mistake, some cruel joke where I ended up in the wrong life, living someone else's story of mediocrity and defeat. The end comes quietly, unremarkably, on a Tuesday afternoon in the hospital where I've been brought after collapsing in the school parking lot, my body finally surrendering to months of malnutrition and stress, of sleepless nights spent staring at the ceiling and wondering what I did wrong. What fundamental flaw in my character made me deserve this systematic destruction of everything I'd ever hoped to become? The doctors speak in concerned whispers about eating disorders and depression, about the importance of family support during recovery. But the only family member who comes to visit is my father, and he sits beside my hospital bed with tears in his eyes, holding my hand and promising that everything will be better once I accept help, once I stop fighting reality and learn to find happiness in the life they've chosen for me. I love you, Madison, he whispers, and I believe him, which somehow makes everything worse because his love is real. But it's not strong enough to protect me from the people who've convinced him that destroying me is actually saving me, that breaking me down is building me up, that erasing my dreams is giving me better ones. Victoria and Linda don't visit, but they send flowers with a card that reads, "Get well soon, we're all rooting for you," signed with the kind of hearts and exclamation points that might seem loving to someone who doesn't know that they're celebrating my final defeat, my complete surrender to their vision of who I should be, what I should want, how I should live the small, quiet life they've designed for the girl who dared to dream beyond her designated role. The last thing I remember is lying in that sterile hospital room, listening to the machines beep their mechanical sympathy, while somewhere across town my family attends Victoria's acceptance celebration at the country club, toasting her bright future with champagne bought with money that should have been mine, laughing about her scholarship to Wharton and her promising internship and her perfect boyfriend who loves her for all the right reasons, while I fade away like a song nobody wants to hear, like a dream nobody believes in, like a girl whose only mistake was thinking she deserved to take up space in a world that had already decided she was expendable. Then I opened my eyes and realized I was staring at my junior year bedroom ceiling, the same water stain that looked like a butterfly, the same rejection letters from summer music programs scattered on my desk, and for a moment I thought I was hallucinating, that the hospital machines were malfunctioning, that death was playing some cruel trick by showing me visions of the past. But when I sat up and grabbed my phone, the date glowed back at me like a promise, like a miracle, like a second chance I never expected to receive. October 15th, junior year, exactly 6 months before the talent show disaster, exactly 6 months before everything went wrong, and as the impossible reality settles over me like sunlight after a long winter, I realize that somehow, impossibly, I've been given the gift of knowledge, the power to see the trap before I walk into it, the opportunity to rewrite the story that ended with my destruction and Victoria's triumph. My phone buzzes with a text from Victoria. Madison, I had the most amazing idea. You should totally perform at the Spring Talent Show. Your songs are so pretty and personal, everyone would love to hear them. And reading her fake enthusiasm now, knowing what I know about her real intentions, about the months of planning and sabotage that went into my humiliation, I feel something cold and sharp crystallizing in my chest. Something that might be called anger if it weren't so calculating, so perfectly controlled. I type back, "That's such a sweet idea. I'll definitely think about it, Isatsu," and send the message with a smile that would terrify them if they could see it. Because I'm not the same naive girl who trusted them before, who believed their concern was real, who walked willingly into their trap because I was so desperate for family acceptance that I ignored every warning sign, every red flag, every moment when my instincts screamed that something was wrong. This time will be different because this time I know exactly what they're planning, exactly how they intend to destroy me. And more importantly, I know something they don't know, something that changes everything. Marcus Liu, my childhood friend and neighbor who tried to warn me before, who I dismissed because I was too blinded by the illusion of Victoria's support, is now the lead singer of Echo Dreams, an indie band that's been gaining serious traction in the music industry, whose latest single just hit #3 on the alternative charts, whose talent and authenticity are everything that Victoria's manufactured perfection could never be. I remember now how he'd looked at me across that auditorium, how his face had twisted with pain as he watched my humiliation, how he'd tried to reach me afterward, but I was too broken, too ashamed to let anyone see the wreckage of my dreams. And I think about all the years we spent making music together as children, all the songs we wrote sitting under the old oak tree in his backyard, all the harmonies that came as naturally as breathing because we understood each other in ways that went deeper than words, deeper than the surface connections that people like Jason and Victoria mistake for love. The next morning, I wake up with a clarity I haven't felt in months, with a purpose that cuts through the depression and anxiety like a sword through silk. And when I come down to breakfast, my stepfamily is already gathered around the kitchen table, discussing Victoria's college applications, with the kind of intense focus they used to reserve for battle strategies, which, I realize now, is exactly what they were. "Good morning, Madison," Linda chirps with that bright, false warmth that I used to mistake for maternal care. "Victoria was just telling us about her idea for you to perform at the talent show. Isn't that exciting?" "It really is," I agree, sitting down and reaching for the orange juice with steady hands. "I've been working with Marcus Liu on some musical arrangements," I mentioned casually at dinner, watching Victoria's fork freeze halfway to her mouth as the name registers, as she realizes that her carefully constructed plan might have a complication she didn't anticipate. "Marcus Liu?" Linda asks, her voice carefully neutral. "Isn't he that boy from next door who used to be in your little music group?" "He's not exactly little anymore," I say with a smile. "His band, Echo Dreams, just hit the top 10 on the alternative charts, and he's been helping me work on some arrangements of songs that were special to my mother." The silence that follows is thick with calculation, as Victoria and Linda process this information, trying to figure out how it affects their plans, whether it represents a threat or an opportunity. And I can practically see the wheels turning in their heads as they reconsider their strategy. That's nice, Victoria finally manages. But you're still planning to do your solo performance at the talent show, right? The one we've been working on together? Actually, I say, setting down my water glass with deliberate care. Marcus mentioned that the organizers reached out to him about being a special guest performer, and he suggested we might do something together, a duet that would combine my songwriting with his experience and technical skills. Victoria's face goes through a series of micro expressions: surprise, alarm, calculation, and finally forced enthusiasm, as she realizes that her simple sabotage plan has suddenly become much more complicated, that destroying a duet with a successful musician will require entirely different tactics than humiliating a solo performer. Well, she says brightly, that sounds ambitious. Are you sure you're ready for that kind of pressure? Performing with someone so accomplished might make you nervous, and we wouldn't want a repeat of any past anxiety issues. I appreciate your concern, I tell her, meeting her gaze directly. But I feel more confident about this collaboration than I've felt about anything in months. There's something powerful about working with someone who truly understands your artistic vision, who supports your creativity instead of questioning it. Linda and Victoria exchange a look across the table, and I know they're already planning their counterattack, already figuring out how to adapt their sabotage to account for Marcus's involvement. But what they don't realize is that I've anticipated their adaptations, prepared for their escalations, documented their previous crimes so thoroughly that any new attempts at sabotage will only provide more evidence for the public exposure I'm planning. Just remember, sweetheart, Linda says with that syrupy tone that used to make me feel loved but now makes my skin crawl, that sometimes when we reach too high, we fall harder than if we'd stayed within our natural limits. I'd hate to see you get hurt again. Don't worry, I assure her. I've learned a lot about who I can trust, about who really has my best interests at heart, and I have a feeling this performance is going to be very educational for everyone involved. The week of the talent show, their sabotage attempts become more desperate and more obvious, and I document every single one with the kind of methodical precision that would make a prosecutor proud, building a case that will destroy not just their reputations, but their ability to harm anyone else the way they harmed me. First, they try to convince Marcus that I'm unstable, that performing with me will damage his career, but he calls me immediately to warn me about their approach, his voice tight with anger at their transparent manipulation. They came to my house, he tells me, your stepmother and stepsister, with this whole concerned family act, telling me that you have a history of mental health issues, that performing publicly triggers anxiety attacks, that they're worried I'm enabling your delusions about having musical talent. And what did you tell them? I ask, though I already know from his tone that their manipulation failed completely. I told them that the Madison I know is one of the most talented musicians I've ever worked with, he says firmly, and that anyone who can't see that is either deaf or has their own agenda. Then I ask them to leave. They didn't take that well, I'm guessing, I say, smiling at the thought of Victoria's face when her manipulation tactics backfired so spectacularly. Let's just say I gotta see what you've been dealing with all these years, Marcus replies, and I'm even more impressed that you survived it with your creativity intact. Second, they try to sabotage our rehearsal space, booking the music room at school for Victoria's college interview preparation during the time Marcus and I had reserved. But I'd anticipated this move and arranged for us to practice at a professional studio where Marcus's band records, a space where their interference can't reach us, and where our music sounds even better than we'd hoped. This is incredible, I tell Marcus as we listen to the playback of Home in Your Heart, our voices blending in harmonies that seem to make the air itself more beautiful. It sounds like something that belongs on an album, not just a high school talent show. That's because it does belong on an album, he says. Madison, what we've created together is professional quality, the kind of music that could actually impact people's lives. And I think after the talent show, we should seriously consider recording these songs properly, maybe shopping them to labels that specialize in authentic, emotional music. The possibility hangs between us like a bridge to a future I never dared imagine, a world where my music could matter to strangers. where my mother's lullabies could comfort other children, where the pain of my past could be transformed into something healing and beautiful. Third, they try to manipulate the talent show organizers, suggesting that Madison Chen might not be reliable, that her previous performance issues make her a risky choice for a high-profile duet. But the organizers are more interested in Marcus's participation than their concerns. And besides, I've made sure they have access to recordings of our rehearsals, evidence of our professionalism and preparation. Actually, the show coordinator tells me when I check in about our performance slot, we're really excited about your duet with Marcus. The preview recording you sent was absolutely beautiful, and we think it's going to be one of the highlights of the evening. I'm excited too, I tell her truthfully. This feels like the kind of performance that could really touch people's hearts, create a moment of genuine connection in all the spectacle and competition. Finally, the night of the talent show arrives, and I stand in front of my bedroom mirror, looking at the girl who's about to take the stage, not as a victim walking into a trap, but as an artist ready to reclaim her voice, her power, her right to take up space in the world. I'm wearing my mother's vintage dress, the one I found in the back of her closet after Victoria and Linda sold most of her belongings. The one they missed because it was wrapped in tissue paper and hidden behind winter coats. And as I smooth the silk over my hips, I feel her presence with me, her strength flowing through my veins, her love armoring me against whatever cruelty awaits. Victoria enters my room without knocking, her face carefully arranged in an expression of sisterly concern. But I can see the calculation behind her eyes, the last-minute attempts to shake my confidence, to make me doubt myself just enough to guarantee that her original plan still succeeds. Madison, she says, sitting on my bed with false intimacy, I just want you to know that no matter what happens tonight, we're all proud of you for trying, for putting yourself out there again after last time. Thank you, I say calmly, applying my mother's vintage lipstick with steady hands. Though I should mention that tonight is going to be very different from last time. Different how? She asks, and I can hear the edge of worry creeping into her voice. Well, I say, turning to face her with a smile that probably looks more predatory than reassuring. Last time I was performing alone, trusting people who didn't have my best interests at heart, believing in support that turned out to be sabotage. Tonight, I'm performing with someone who actually cares about me, someone who's seen what I'm capable of when I'm not being undermined by family members who mistake cruelty for love. Victoria's face goes pale, and I know she's starting to realize that her victim has become something else, someone else, a person who won't be destroyed as easily as the naive girl who walked into their trap before. Madison, she starts, but I cut her off with a raised hand. Save it, Victoria, I say pleasantly. Tonight you're going to see exactly what I'm capable of when I'm supported instead of sabotaged, when I'm performing with someone who believes in my talent instead of someone who's actively working to destroy it. I walk past her toward the door, but pause at the threshold to deliver the final blow. Oh, and Victoria? I know about everything. The tampered sheet music, the sound system sabotage, the financial fraud, Jason's fake relationship, all of it. I have recordings, documentation, evidence of every crime you and your mother committed against me. And after tonight's performance, everyone else will know too. Her gasp follows me down the hallway, but I don't look back because I'm done being the girl who apologizes for taking up space, who shrinks herself to make others comfortable, who accepts cruelty as love because she's desperate to belong somewhere, to someone, to a family that never really wanted her anyway. At the school auditorium, the energy is electric with anticipation, and I can see that the audience is much larger than previous years, drawn by the promise of Marcus Liu's special guest appearance, the local boy who made good in the music industry and is returning to honor his roots. Backstage, Marcus finds me in the same corner where Jason Park broke up with me in my previous life. But this time, I'm not hiding in shame. I'm preparing for triumph, warming up my voice and running through our arrangement one final time. You look beautiful, he says, and the compliment feels different from any I've received before, free of agenda or manipulation, offered simply because he means it, because seeing me happy makes him happy. You clean up pretty well yourself, I tell him, admiring his vintage suit that complements my mother's dress perfectly, creating a visual harmony that matches our musical partnership. Are you nervous? He asks, though he already knows the answer from my calm demeanor, my steady breathing, my complete absence of the anxiety that characterized my previous performance. No, I say honestly. I'm excited. I'm ready to share something beautiful with people, to honor my mother's memory, to show everyone what real music sounds like when it comes from authenticity instead of artifice. Then let's go make some magic, he says, offering me his arm with old-fashioned gallantry that makes me smile. The first half of the talent show passes in a blur of adequate performances and polite applause, but I can feel the audience's energy building towards something special, toward the moment when Marcus and I will take the stage and transform this high school event into something that feels more like a concert, more like art, more like the kind of experience that reminds people why music matters. Victoria performs near the end of the first act, and watching her from the wings, I'm struck by how technically competent but emotionally hollow her performance is, how her perfectly practiced choreography and professionally arranged song lack any connection to genuine feeling, any sense that she's sharing something real, rather than executing a performance designed to impress, rather than move. The audience responds with respectful applause, but there's no magic in the moment. No sense that they've been touched by something beautiful, and I can see Victoria's face fall slightly as she realizes that technical proficiency without emotional authenticity isn't enough to create the kind of impact she was hoping for. Ladies and gentlemen, the MC announces as Victoria leaves the stage, we have a very special treat for you tonight. Please welcome back to Harmony Heights Academy, a young man who's taken the music world by storm, the lead singer of Echoed Dreams, Marcus Liu. The audience erupts in applause and cheers, and Marcus walks onto the stage with the kind of easy confidence that comes from performing professionally, from knowing that his talent is real and recognized and valued by people who understand music. Thank you, he says into the microphone, his voice carrying easily through the auditorium. It's incredible to be back here, in the place where I first discovered my love for music, where I first learned that songs could be more than entertainment, that they could be healing, they could be truth, they could be love made audible. The audience is completely silent, hanging on every word, and I can feel the energy shifting from polite attention to genuine engagement. The kind of connection that happens when an artist speaks directly to hearts instead of just ears. Tonight, Marcus continues, I want to share something very special with you. A collaboration with someone who's been part of my musical journey since we were children. Someone whose talent and authenticity remind me why I fell in love with music in the first place. Please welcome my dear friend and extraordinary artist, Madison Chen. I walk onto the stage to thunderous applause, but more importantly, I walk onto it as myself, as the person I was always meant to be, the artist who deserves to be heard, the daughter who carries her mother's legacy in her voice, the young woman who refuses to be diminished by people who mistake their own insecurities for wisdom about her limitations. Hi, everyone, I say, my voice steady and clear. What Marcus and I are going to share with you tonight is very personal, very precious to me. These are songs that my mother wrote, lullabies she sang to me when I was little, melodies that have been living in my heart for years, waiting for the right moment, the right partnership, the right reason to be shared with the world. I can see Victoria in the audience, her face pale with shock and growing horror, as she realizes that her carefully planned sabotage has not only failed but backfired spectacularly, that instead of destroying me, her cruelty has led me to this moment of triumph, this public validation of everything she tried to convince me I wasn't. This first song is called Home in Your Heart, I continue, and it's about finding the place where you belong, the people who see your true self and love it unconditionally, the feeling of safety that comes from being truly known and truly accepted. Marcus starts the opening chords, and the familiar melody fills the auditorium like sunlight after rain, like the first breath after nearly drowning, like the sound of everything I've ever hoped for becoming real. And when I begin to sing, my voice is stronger than it's ever been, clearer than it was even in our rehearsals, as if the combination of justice and love and artistic truth has unlocked something in me that was always there but had been buried under years of systematic undermining. In the quiet of the evening, when the stars begin to shine, there's a place that lives inside you where your heart can call it mine. Home is not a place you go to. Home is not a house or street. Home is in the hearts that love you. Home is where two souls can meet. Our voices blend on the harmony. Marcus's rich baritone supporting my melody like roots supporting a tree. like the foundation that makes everything else possible. And I can see people in the audience starting to cry, not from sadness, but from recognition, from the kind of emotional truth that cuts through all pretense and speaks directly to the experiences that make us human. So when the world feels cold and distant, when you're lost and can't find your way, remember that you carry with you love that never fades away. Home is in your heart forever. Home is in the songs you sing. Home is in the arms that hold you. Home is in the joy they bring. As we reach the final chorus, I look out at the audience and see my father in the third row, tears streaming down his face as he recognizes his late wife's melody, his first wife's words, the lullaby she used to sing to both of us when life felt overwhelming, when the future seemed uncertain, when we needed to remember that love is the only thing that really matters, the only thing that lasts, the only thing that makes any of this worthwhile. The song ends to complete silence, the kind of reverent quiet that follows truly transcendent art. And then the applause begins. Not the polite clapping of a school event, but the thunderous appreciation of an audience that has been moved, changed, elevated by what they've witnessed. Thank you, I say into the microphone. But before I can continue, I notice Victoria standing up in the audience, her face twisted with rage and desperation, her carefully constructed facade finally cracking under the pressure of watching her victim become victorious. "This is ridiculous," she shouts, her voice cutting through the applause like a knife. "Madison doesn't deserve this attention, this praise, this worship for singing her dead mother's songs. She's not talented, she's not special, she's just a sad girl living in the past, trading on sympathy instead of actual ability." The audience turns to stare at her in shock, and I can see Linda trying to pull her back into her seat, trying to control the damage. But Victoria is beyond strategy now, beyond manipulation, consumed by the kind of pure fury that comes from watching a carefully planned destruction turn into its opposite. "She stole those songs," Victoria continues, her voice getting higher and more hysterical. "They belong to the family. They should have been mine to use, mine to perform, mine to get credit for. She's nothing but a thief and a fraud. And everyone who's clapping for her is being manipulated by a sob story instead of recognizing real talent when they see it." The auditorium is dead silent now. Everyone's staring at Victoria's public breakdown, her complete loss of control, her transformation from the poised and perfect daughter into something ugly and desperate and very, very revealing. "Victoria," I say calmly into the microphone, my voice carrying easily through the shocked silence, "I think everyone can see exactly who you really are now. Exactly what kind of person attacks someone for honoring their mother's memory. Exactly what kind of family member tries to steal a dead woman's songs and then claims ownership when they're finally shared with love instead of greed." "You don't know what you're talking about," Victoria screams, but her voice is breaking now, cracking under the weight of public humiliation, of exposure, of the complete failure of every manipulation tactic she's ever used. "Actually," I say, reaching into my pocket for my phone, "I know exactly what I'm talking about because I have recordings of you and your mother planning my sabotage, documentation of your financial fraud, evidence of every crime you committed while pretending to love me, to support me, to have my best interests at heart." I press play on one of the audio files and Victoria's voice fills the auditorium, clear and damning. "The key is making her think it's her own failure. If we make it too obvious that we sabotaged her, she might gain sympathy. But if everyone believes she just choked under pressure, then she'll internalize the blame." The audience gasps, and I can see people pulling out their phones, recording this moment, this exposure, this public revelation of the cruelty that's been hiding behind fake concern and manufactured family love. "Turn that off," Victoria shrieks, but it's too late. The damage is done, the truth is out, and everyone can see exactly who she is, exactly what she's capable of, exactly why someone might need to protect themselves from the kind of family that destroys rather than nurtures, that competes rather than celebrates, that steals rather than supports. "I have hours of recordings," I continue, my voice still calm, still controlled, still focused on truth rather than revenge, though the two have become indistinguishable at this point. Conversations about tampering with my sheet music, plans to sabotage the sound system, discussions about how much humiliation would be required to break my spirit completely, schemes to steal my college fund, and redirect it to someone more deserving of investment. Linda is trying to drag Victoria toward the exit now, But Victoria breaks free, rushing toward the stage with the kind of desperate fury that comes from watching your entire, carefully constructed world collapse in real time. Like, "You can't do this to me!" she screams. "I worked too hard. I planned too carefully. I deserve better than this. You were supposed to fail. You were supposed to break. You were supposed to accept your place and let me have what I earned." "What you earned?" I ask, and now there's steel in my voice, the cold anger of someone who's been pushed too far for too long. "You earned this moment, Victoria. You earned the humiliation of being exposed publicly for the person you really are. You earned the consequences of trying to destroy someone who never did anything to you except exist, except want to be loved by the family that was supposed to protect her." Security is moving toward Victoria now, but she's not done. She's too far gone to stop, too consumed by rage and desperation to care about dignity or consequences, or the fact that she's proving every accusation I've made with her own behavior. "This isn't over!" she shouts as they escort her toward the exit. "You think you've won, but you haven't. You're still nothing. You're still ordinary. You're still just a sad little girl playing dress-up in her dead mother's clothes." "No, Victoria," I say into the microphone, my voice carrying clearly through the stunned auditorium. "I'm someone who survived your cruelty and turned it into strength. Someone who found real love after experiencing your fake version. Someone who discovered that being ordinary is impossible when you're surrounded by people who see your extraordinary heart and choose to nurture it instead of destroy it." The security guards remove Victoria from the auditorium, and Linda follows, her own face twisted with shame and fury, and suddenly the space feels lighter, cleaner, like a poison has been drained from the air. "I'm sorry everyone had to witness that," I say to the audience, "but maybe it's important sometimes to see the difference between real support and fake concern, between people who want to lift you up and people who want to tear you down, between family that's chosen and family that's merely biological." The applause that follows is different from before, warmer somehow, more personal, as if the audience has moved from appreciating my performance to appreciating me as a person, as someone who's overcome real obstacles, real cruelty, real attempts to diminish her light. "Marcus and I have one more song we'd like to share with you," I continue. "If you're willing to stay with us through this journey, if you're ready to end this evening with something beautiful instead of something ugly, something healing instead of something harmful." "Always," Marcus says into his microphone, and the single word carries so much weight, so much promise, so much love that I feel tears starting in my eyes. Not from sadness, but from gratitude, from joy, from the incredible relief of finally being seen and valued and protected by someone who understands that love means building people up rather than tearing them down. The second song is "Stars Remember Everything," my mother's lullaby about how the universe holds on to every moment of love, every act of kindness, every beautiful thing that people create together, and as we perform it, I can feel the audience settling into something deeper than entertainment, something more like communion, like shared recognition of the things that make life worth living, despite all the cruelty and competition and attempts to make us smaller than we are. When the night is dark and lonely, when you're wondering if you matter, look up at the stars above you. They remember every chapter, every time you showed compassion, every time you chose to care, every moment you made music, every dream you chose to share. Our voices intertwine on the bridge, creating harmonies that seem to lift the melody beyond what either of us could achieve alone. And I realize that this is what my mother was trying to teach me with her lullabies, that we're all connected by invisible threads of love and music and shared humanity. That even when people try to convince us we're alone, we're part of something larger, something beautiful, something that can't be destroyed by jealousy or greed, or the small-minded cruelty of people who mistake others' light for a threat to their own. So when you're feeling forgotten, when you're lost inside the pain, remember that the stars are watching. They'll help you shine again, because love is never wasted, and dreams are never small, and every song you sing with courage makes the universe more whole. As the final notes fade away, the silence that follows is profound, sacred almost, and then the standing ovation begins. Not just polite appreciation, but genuine celebration. People on their feet cheering not just for the music, but for the triumph, for the victory of authenticity over artifice, of love over manipulation, of truth over the kind of careful lies that some families use to control their members. Marcus takes my hand and we bow together, And in that moment, I feel my mother's presence so strongly that I almost turn to look for her, almost expect to see her standing in the wings, smiling with pride at the daughter who finally found her voice, who finally claimed her place, who finally learned that she was never too much or too little, but exactly enough, exactly right, exactly worthy of the love she'd been searching for in all the wrong places. Thank you, I say into the microphone one final time, for listening to my mother's songs, for witnessing this moment, for being the kind of audience that makes vulnerability feel safe, that makes sharing feel healing, that makes music feel like the miracle it's always been. As we leave the stage, I catch sight of my father in the audience, still crying, still applauding, and I know that something has shifted in him too, that hearing his first wife's songs performed with such love and skill has reminded him of who he was before Linda and Victoria convinced him that being a good stepfather meant sacrificing his daughter's happiness for his stepdaughter's advancement. Madison, he calls out as Marcus and I make our way through the crowd of well-wishers and congratulators. Madison, wait. I turn to face him, this man who gave me life but failed to protect it, who loved me but not enough to shield me from the people who wanted to diminish me. And I see in his eyes the recognition of what he's lost, what he's allowed to be taken, what he needs to try to repair if there's any hope of salvaging our relationship. I'm sorry, he says, and the words are heavy with years of accumulated guilt. I'm so sorry for not seeing, for not protecting you, for letting them convince me that their cruelty was kindness, that their manipulation was love. I know you are, I tell him, and I mean it because his pain is genuine, even if his protection wasn't. But sorry isn't enough anymore, Dad. If you want to be part of my life going forward, you'll need to prove that you've learned who deserves your loyalty, who actually has my best interests at heart. I will, he promises. I'll make this right, Madison. I'll get your college fund back. I'll get your mother's piano back. I'll make sure Linda and Victoria face consequences for what they've done to you, to us, to our family. Good, I say simply. Because I'm done protecting people from the consequences of their choices, done making myself smaller so others can feel bigger, done accepting crumbs of affection from people who should be offering banquets of love. Marcus squeezes my hand, reminding me that I'm not alone anymore, that I have someone in my corner who sees my worth and chooses to celebrate it rather than diminish it, someone who makes music more beautiful rather than turning it into a weapon. 6 months later, I'm sitting in Marcus's apartment in Nashville, where we've moved to pursue our music careers together, where record labels are interested in the authentic, emotional songs we create when we're not fighting sabotage or defending ourselves from family members who mistake support for competition. Victoria is working at a retail store in our hometown. Her dreams of business school derailed when the financial aid fraud was exposed, when her scholarship was revoked, when the recordings of her cruelty went viral and made her unemployable in any field that requires working with people. Linda left my father after the evidence of her schemes became public, after she realized that her meal ticket was no longer willing to sacrifice his daughter for her daughter's advancement, after she understood that her manipulations had been documented and distributed and would follow her wherever she tried to rebuild. Jason Park was rejected from Harvard when the admissions committee learned about his participation in the emotional abuse of a fellow student. When they decided that character matters more than test scores, when they realized that someone willing to fake a relationship to help destroy a vulnerable person might not represent the kind of values they want associated with their institution. My father has been working to repair our relationship, slowly and carefully, proving through actions rather than words that he's learned to distinguish between real love and skilled manipulation, between family members who build each other up and family members who tear each other down for personal gain. Marcus and I are engaged now, planning a wedding where we'll perform together, where music will be celebration rather than competition, where love will be the foundation rather than a strategy, where family will be chosen rather than merely biological. Are you happy? He asks me, as we sit on the balcony overlooking the city where dreams come true for people brave enough to pursue them, where authenticity is valued over artifice, where talent is nurtured rather than sabotaged. I'm happy, I tell him, and I mean it in ways I never could have imagined during those dark months when I thought Victoria's vision of my limitations was the truth, when I believed that ordinariness was my destiny, when I accepted that some people are meant to shine while others are meant to dim their light so the chosen ones can sparkle brighter. Your mother would be proud, he says. And I know he's right, because I can feel her presence in the music we make together, in the love we've built, in the life I've created by refusing to accept other people's definitions of what I deserve, what I'm capable of, what I'm allowed to become. She would be, I agree, because I finally learned what she was trying to teach me with those lullabies. That home isn't a place, but a person. That love isn't about making yourself smaller, but about finding someone who sees how big you really are. That music isn't about perfection, but about truth. About sharing the authentic parts of yourself with people who appreciate them, rather than trying to destroy them. And as the sun sets over Nashville, over the city of music and dreams and second chances, I sing one of my mother's lullabies, my voice carrying across the evening air like a promise, like a prayer, like proof that sometimes the most beautiful endings come from the courage to rewrite the stories that others tried to write for us, to reclaim the voices that others tried to silence, to become the people we were always meant to be before anyone convinced us we were meant to be less. Sometimes the most beautiful music comes from learning to harmonize with the person who's been singing your song all along. And sometimes the greatest revenge is refusing to stay broken, refusing to stay small, refusing to accept that cruelty is love, or that manipulation is family, or that other people's limitations should become your own. Sometimes rebirth isn't supernatural, but simply the decision to stop dying, to stop letting others kill your dreams, to stop accepting that you deserve less than the love and support and celebration that every human heart needs to thrive. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, if you're very brave, if you're very determined to claim the life you're meant to live, you get to stand on a stage with someone who loves you and sing your mother's songs to an audience that appreciates them, that celebrates them, that recognizes them as the gifts they've always been, waiting for the right moment, the right partnership, the right reason to be shared with a world that's hungry for authentic beauty, genuine emotion, and the kind of truth that can only come from hearts that have been broken and healed, tested and proven, hurt and ultimately triumphant. Been thinking about it all night, and I have some ideas that I think will really surprise everyone. Victoria's eyes light up with satisfaction, and I can practically see her mentally rubbing her hands together as she contemplates the success of her manipulation. The ease with which she's convinced me to walk into her carefully constructed trap. But what she doesn't know is that I'm not walking into anything. I'm laying a trap of my own, one that will catch not just her, but everyone who participated in my destruction. Everyone who thought that Madison Chen was weak enough, naive enough, disposable enough to be sacrificed for their convenience. I'm so glad you're being open to new experiences, my father says, beaming at me with the kind of pride that used to make my heart sing, but now just reminds me of how easily his love can be redirected, how quickly his loyalty can be bought with the right combination of tears and manipulation from his new wife and her daughter. Oh, I'm definitely open to new experiences, I say, meeting Victoria's gaze across the table. In fact, I think this talent show is going to be a real learning experience for everyone involved. Over the following weeks, I begin implementing my strategy with the kind of careful precision that would have impressed them if they'd been paying attention. But they're too focused on their own scheming to notice that their target has fundamentally changed, that the girl they're planning to destroy no longer exists, replaced by someone who understands that survival requires becoming the predator rather than the prey. First, I start documenting everything, using the voice recording app on my phone to capture their planning sessions, their cruel laughter as they discuss the best ways to sabotage my performance, their cold calculations about how much humiliation will be required to break my spirit completely. And listening to these recordings now, with the benefit of hindsight and the armor of knowledge, I'm amazed by how thoroughly they planned my destruction, how every detail was considered and arranged for maximum psychological damage. The key is making her think it's her own failure, I hear Linda explain to Victoria during one of their late-night strategy sessions. If we make it too obvious that we sabotaged her, she might gain sympathy, but if everyone believes she just choked under pressure, then she'll internalize the blame, accept that she's not meant for this kind of attention. And once her confidence is completely destroyed, Victoria adds, she'll be grateful when we redirect her toward more appropriate goals, more realistic expectations that don't threaten anyone else's opportunities. Listening to them dissect my psychology like scientists studying a lab rat, I feel a cold rage that's different from anything I experienced in my previous life. Cleaner somehow, more focused, because now I understand that their cruelty wasn't spontaneous or emotional, but calculated and strategic, designed not just to hurt me, but to remake me in their image of what I should be, what I should want, who I should become. Second, I reach out to Marcus Liu, my childhood friend who became a successful musician while I was drowning in my stepfamily's manipulation. And when I call him, my heart pounds with a mixture of hope and terror because this is the crucial moment, the point where my plan either begins to work or falls apart entirely. Madison? His voice sounds exactly the same, warm and familiar and tinged with concern. I wasn't sure I'd ever hear from you again after everything that happened. I know I've been distant, I say, choosing my words carefully because I can't explain the real reason for my transformation. Can't tell him about rebirth and second chances and supernatural opportunities for revenge. But I've been doing a lot of thinking about our friendship, about the music we used to make together, and I wonder if maybe we could try collaborating again. The silence stretches long enough that I start to panic, thinking that maybe too much has changed. Maybe the success of his band has made him forget about the girl next door who used to sing harmonies while he played guitar under the oak tree, but then he laughs and the sound is like sunlight breaking through clouds. Madison, I've been waiting for this call for years, he says, and I can hear the smile in his voice. I never stopped hoping that you'd remember how good we were together, how natural it felt when we made music as kids. I remember everything, I tell him, and it's true in ways he can't possibly understand. I remember every song we wrote, every harmony we found, every moment when the music felt more real than anything else in the world. Then let's make some new memories, he says. Let's see if we can recapture that magic. Maybe even improve on it now that we're older, more experienced, more aware of what music can do when it comes from the heart instead of from obligation or expectation. We arranged to meet the following weekend, and as I hang up the phone, I feel something I haven't experienced since before the talent show disaster. Genuine excitement about music, about creation, about the possibility that my voice might actually matter to someone, that my songs might touch hearts instead of just providing ammunition for mockery. When Saturday arrives, I tell my family I'm going to the library to work on college application essays, and Victoria nods approvingly, pleased that I'm finally focusing on realistic goals instead of wasting time on artistic fantasies. But instead, I drive to Marcus's house, my hands shaking slightly as I park in the same driveway where we used to race bicycles and catch fireflies and dream about futures that seemed infinite with possibility. He opens the door before I can knock, and seeing him again after so many months of isolation and depression is like remembering what it feels like to breathe properly, what it means to be seen by someone who actually knows who you are, beneath all the damage and manipulation and careful reconstruction that others have imposed on your identity. You look, he starts, then pauses, studying my face with the kind of attention that would make me uncomfortable from anyone else but feels natural from him. Different, stronger maybe. I feel different, I admit, following him into the house that still smells like his mother's cooking and sounds like music even when no one's playing, because some places hold melodies in their walls, in their memories, in the echo of all the joy that's happened within their boundaries. His room has changed since we were kids. The superhero posters replaced by concert photographs and music equipment. The twin bed upgraded to something more suitable for a young man who's achieved the kind of success that most musicians only dream about. But the guitar that he picks up is the same one he's had since middle school. The one we used to pass back and forth while we figured out chord progressions and argued about lyrics and discovered that our voices fit together like pieces of a puzzle designed by someone who understood harmony better than we understood ourselves. So, he says, settling cross-legged on the floor and gesturing for me to join him, what do you want to work on? Do you have songs you've been writing, or should we start from scratch? Actually, I say, taking a deep breath, because this is where I reveal something that Victoria doesn't know exists, something that will be the foundation of her downfall. I have some songs that my mother wrote, lullabies she used to sing to me when I was little, and I've been thinking about arranging them for performance. Maybe adding harmonies and modern instrumentation while keeping the emotional core intact. His eyes light up with interest, and I can see the musician in him responding to the creative challenge, the opportunity to take something beautiful and make it even more beautiful, to honor the past while creating something new. That sounds amazing, he says. Deeply personal, but also universal. The kind of music that connects with people on multiple levels. Do you have the melodies memorized, or are there written versions? I have them memorized, I tell him. And it's true because my mother's lullabies are burned into my heart in ways that sheet music could never capture. But I've never performed them for anyone else. They've always felt too private, too sacred to share. Then sharing them now must mean something special, he says gently. And I nod because it does mean something special. It means reclaiming the part of my heritage that Victoria can't steal, can't twist, can't use against me because she doesn't even know it exists. I start with Home in Your Heart, the lullaby my mother sang during thunderstorms when I was afraid of the lightning. And as the melody fills the space between us, I watch Marcus's face transform with recognition of something beautiful, something true, something that connects to the part of music that has nothing to do with fame or success or proving anything to anyone, and everything to do with the human need to find meaning in sound, comfort in rhythm, hope in harmony. Madison, he whispers when I finish, that's incredible. The melody is hauntingly beautiful, and the lyrics are like poetry, like something that should be preserved and shared and celebrated. You really think so? I ask, and despite everything I know about my plan, despite all my confidence in my strategy for revenge, I still need this validation. Still crave the confirmation that my artistic instincts are real, that my mother's legacy lives on in something worth sharing. I know so, he says firmly, already reaching for his guitar. Let me try to find some chords that complement the melody, see if we can create an arrangement that honors the original while making it accessible to a modern audience. The next few hours pass like minutes as we work together, my voice weaving around his guitar accompaniment, both of us contributing ideas for harmonies and bridges and instrumental interludes. And it's like slipping back into a language we both speak fluently but had forgotten we shared. A creative partnership that feels as natural as breathing and as powerful as lightning. We should record this, Marcus says when we've worked out a basic arrangement. Just a rough demo so we can remember what we've created. Maybe refine it further when we meet again next week. Next week? I ask, trying not to sound too eager, too desperate for this connection to continue. Unless you don't want to, he says quickly. I know you must be busy with school and applications and everything, but I'd love to keep working on this. Maybe develop a whole set of your mother's songs into something that could be performed publicly. I'd love that, I tell him. And I mean it more than I've meant anything in months. Because this collaboration isn't just about revenge, or strategy, or proving anything to Victoria and her allies. It's about rediscovering the part of myself that they tried to destroy. The part that believes in beauty and creativity and the power of music to heal wounds that seemed permanent. As I drive home that evening, I feel more alive than I have since the talent show disaster. More hopeful about the future. More confident in my ability to not just survive, but thrive. And when I walk into the house and see Victoria and Linda sitting at the kitchen table, going over college brochures and scholarship applications, I smile at them with genuine warmth because I know something they don't know. Their carefully constructed plan is about to implode spectacularly, and I'm going to be the one holding the detonator. How was the library? Victoria asks, looking up from her business school research with the kind of patronizing interest that adults show children when they're pretending to care about unimportant activities. Very productive, I say truthfully. I'm making excellent progress on my projects, developing ideas that I think will really surprise everyone when they're ready to be shared. That's wonderful, sweetheart, Linda adds. It's so important to focus on realistic goals, practical achievements that will serve you well in whatever career path you eventually choose. Oh, I'm definitely focused on my path, I agree, and I have a feeling that by spring, everyone will see exactly where that path has been leading. Over the following months, I continue meeting with Marcus every weekend, and our collaboration deepens into something that feels almost magical, the kind of creative partnership that produces music greater than the sum of its parts, songs that seem to channel emotions and experiences beyond what either of us could access alone. We arrange all of my mother's lullabies, transforming them from simple children's songs into sophisticated compositions that maintain their emotional authenticity while showcasing both our technical skills and artistic maturity. And as we work together, I start to remember who I was before Victoria and Linda and Jason convinced me that I was ordinary, that my dreams were delusions, that my voice was meant to stay silent. You know, Marcus says one afternoon as we're putting the finishing touches on our arrangement of Stars Remember Everything, I always wondered what happened between us, why you stopped coming over, why you seemed to forget that we were friends. I didn't forget, I tell him, because honesty seems important now, necessary for building the kind of trust that will make our partnership strong enough to withstand what's coming. I just got distracted by other people, other relationships that seemed more important at the time, but turned out to be less real than what we had. Well, he says, smiling in a way that makes my heart skip slightly. I'm glad you found your way back because this feels right, Madison. This feels like what we were always supposed to be doing together. It does, I agree. And I realize that somewhere in the process of planning my revenge, I've also been falling in love. Not with the idea of Marcus or with what he represents, but with the person he actually is. The friend who never stopped believing in me, even when I stopped believing in myself. The artist who sees beauty in my mother's lullabies and magic in our shared harmonies. Meanwhile, Victoria and Linda continue their scheming, growing more confident as the talent show approaches, more certain that their plan will succeed because I seem to be cooperating so perfectly, preparing for my own destruction with the kind of thoroughness that makes their victory seem inevitable. She's been so focused on her college applications, I hear Linda tell my father, so mature about accepting her limitations and pursuing more practical goals. I think our little intervention last year really helped her understand herself better. I'm proud of how she's handled everything, my father responds, and I can hear the relief in his voice. The satisfaction of a parent who believes his child has finally learned to be happy with less, to want smaller things, to accept the boundaries that others have drawn around her potential. But what they don't know is that I've been using their own weapons against them, documenting their conversations, gathering evidence of their systematic manipulation, preparing to expose not just their sabotage of my performance, but their financial fraud, their emotional abuse, their calculated destruction of a child's self-esteem for their own benefit. 3 weeks before the talent show, Marcus gets the call that changes everything, the invitation that turns our private collaboration into a public statement, our personal healing into a platform for justice. Madison, he says, his voice tight with excitement when he calls me. You're not going to believe this, but the organizers of the talent show reached out to me. Apparently, someone told them that I was back in town and they want to know if I'd be interested in performing as a special guest, maybe closing out the show with a song or two. My heart pounds as I realize that the universe is aligning in ways that feel almost too perfect, too convenient, too much like the kind of cosmic justice that only exists in stories, but I'm not questioning the gift, I'm embracing it. That's incredible, I tell him. What did you say? I told them I'd think about it, he says. But honestly, I'm more interested in performing with you than doing a solo set. What if we proposed doing one of your mother's songs together as a duet? It would be a way to honor her memory while showcasing the work we've been doing. And it might be healing for you to share that music in the place where you had such a difficult experience before. You'd want to do that? I ask, though I already know the answer. Can already see how perfectly this fits into the revenge plan that's been crystallizing in my mind for months. I'd be honored to do that, he says, if you're ready, if you think you can handle performing publicly again after what happened last time. I'm ready, I tell him. And I mean it in ways that go beyond courage or confidence, because I'm not just ready to perform. I'm ready to reclaim everything they tried to take from me. Ready to show them what real talent looks like when it's supported by genuine love instead of undermined by jealousy and manipulation. The final phase of my plan begins 2 weeks before the talent show, when I start letting slip details about my collaboration with Marcus, carefully calculated revelations that will make Victoria and Linda's sabotage more difficult while building anticipation for what we're going to do together.